Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 769. This is for the 12th of October, 2020, the year that never ends. It's the pre-show. It is that magical, marvelous time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. So welcome. By the way, we're going to do two shows this week. We're going to do a Thursday night special. Yeah, Thursday night. I'm actually going to take a vacation week. I've not had a vacation day since last year. Been a little short-staffed here, so I will be off work next week. And I don't know if I've ever had a week off in October. Makes sense. I mean, why not? It's a great time of the year. It's fall. So for my mental health, I'm going to take a few days off. And so next week's show will be produced on Thursday night of this week. So we will have a good time with that. And let's get everybody online here and see what is going on. We're thankful that the weather is nice and quiet this week. We had a hurricane last week, Delta, and we'll check to see who won the forecast in the intensity for the placement in the intensity forecast, because we all had our guess. I know I picked Pass Christian, Mississippi, so I automatically lose. All right, let's get all of our regulars in and get them invited, and we should be ready to go. All right. Got my camera going here. Forgot my good camera last week, so I had to use the little built-in camera. But anyway, we're good. And if you're new to this, just move the fader about 6 minutes in, the little slider 6 minutes in. Not the fader, the slider for the start of the show, the meat of the program here. But having said that, from time to time, you will get absolute jewels with the pre-show, because occasionally we do say outrageous things. And with this might be a wild show tonight. Knowing who I think's going to be on, of course we have several guests, and it'll be good. So let's get Bill on here, and he's our guest booking officer. He can give us a total tease here, a preview. Wow, Bill's got him a chroma key. He got some funky light, got him a chroma key going on there. Bill, are you chroma keying? Yo, Bill. Bill can't hear a word I'm saying. Looks like he's at Railroad Park in downtown Birmingham. And that chroma key's got your head chopped off. I mean, now your whole arm is gone. That was great.
Well, I had to dress up, James. I'm tired of wearing.
Are you at some undisclosed location that you can't talk about?
There we go. Get it now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Can I hear you? Yeah, I can hear you now. All right. So
are you at some undisclosed location, Bill, that you can't talk about?
No, I'm changing up my setup here, and so like my office looks unprofessional right now.
So, I like that no arm thing. When you lean in one way, your arm goes away. So that's kind of like, there you go.
What is part of the
armless Bill?
I do that. Yeah, just a little piece of it.
Armless Bill.
There's Scott. Yeah, there you save that. We might need it. There's Aubrey. Hello, Scott.
Hey, Bill. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing fine.
Christina, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yep. Perfect.
Fantastic.
So now we have Dylan. We'll have a full house. Full house of guests.
Okay. Well, we're 4 minutes early.
You're getting later and later with these invites.
Remember back in the good old days, we get on 20 minutes late trying to get everybody on Google Hangouts.
It's just been heaven.
How times have changed. Have radically changed.
We all know Zoom far too well now.
We've got a lot of practice. That was the difference, James. With Hangouts, nobody had ever used it. Now everybody's using it.
Yeah, Bill, your bandwidth is a little constrained. You got a different setup there.
No, and no kids hogging the game bandwidth tonight, so it's not that.
Okay. Ooh, now when you turn, half your nose went away.
I better stay still.
Yeah,
I turn off this background.
Aubrey, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Not bad.
I'll tell you, today went by like a flash. I feel like I haven't gotten enough done.
They are all like that now, Aubrey.
Where does the time go?
Time flies when you're having fun.
I can see. My contact's a little blurry tonight. Bill, you got a fantastic background going on there.
Nice. It worked. If I lean this way, it disappears. If I lean this way, my nose disappears. So it's not.
Yeah, he leads one way, he loses his arm. The other way, he loses a nose. That's some.
Bill's just losing limbs tonight.
It looks like you got some kind of a heat lamp on you or something there. You got some hot light there.
I got a new camera because my problem. You heard me complain for 2 years about this Mac keyboard, so I built an impromptu docking station. But of course, that eliminates the camera in the MacBook Pro. So I got a Logitech camera, and it's hot. I mean, it's really.
What kind of camera is it?
Turn it down. It's a Logitech Stream Cam.
That's exactly what I'm using.
It's really bright.
Exactly what I'm using.
Before I'm in the exact same position I was, but it's like, whoa, really hot.
There's a little piece of software that you can download, but I downloaded the software, but I rarely ever have to use it. It just, like I said, I'm using it now with. Yeah, you can adjust the brightness, the all the different parameters. I'm not a video guy, but I forget what it's. But if you go to Logitech Stream Cam software, just search it and you'll find it, and you can tone it down. See, I think Bill is at an undisclosed secret location. He's just not talking to us. He's not telling us something. There's something going on here. But we won't pry into his business.
So you can end the conspiracy theories.
I think you should. I think you should
have the conspiracy theories.
I think he's in a bathroom stall in an airport in Portland.
Okay. So you have to tell me. Do you want the conspiracy theories to continue or?
No, we don't want to know. We'll just let it go. Where is everybody? We're like the only people here, and it's 8:00 Central.
Everybody has abandoned us.
Wow.
Unacceptable.
Okay. Well, no, it's just like we've not had this.
Well, both of them
a group in a long time.
Didn't Nate and Kim both email tonight?
I actually slipped down to our little local cafe here, and there's Troy.
Nate sent in a POW.
Yeah, I didn't hear from Kim, I don't think.
How does she stand on her childbirth situation? Isn't she getting close to her due date?
Should be.
Maybe she had that baby. That'll be some breaking news. All right, let's get this thing going here. Troy.
Hello, James.
Be sure I got everything queued up.
WeatherBrains is brought.
All right. Let's record channel 1, channel 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by the great folks at Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
It's WeatherBrains, the weekly show all about weather, the oldest weather podcast in the universe. We were podcasting before podcasting was cool. episode number 769. This is for October 12th, 2020. And thankfully, where we are, we have no hurricanes to deal with this week, which is a treat. Troy, you have any hurricanes where you are?
Nothing meteorologically. There are other hurricanes I have to deal with, but they're not meteorological, which is great news. I agree with you, James, this week.
How about what happened to the Hook'em Horns in the Red River Classic?
Boy, that was an interesting ball game. Let me put it this way. I like the way my Aggies played Florida. We'll put it that way.
Okay.
They
there
did
you go.
all right. They did
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Well, what happened to Mississippi State after that first week showing, James?
One and done, man. One and done. That's called one and done. They're talking about benching this guy who threw for like 700 yards in the first game, broke all SEC records. Yeah. He was like under consideration for a Heisman after week one. And now they're talking about replacing him.
But James, the saying is, what have you done for me today?
Lately.
Today, what have you done for me?
You're only as good as your last forecast. It's like
exactly right, sir.
But I will say, I sat up here for 7 hours on Saturday and nothing happened, thank goodness. But, when there's a tornado threat, you have to sit here. And so I turned on that, Cotton Bowl Classic, and wow, what an incredible game. I mean, you just hated for somebody to lose. Goodness. So
that thing was almost as bad as a root canal. I mean, it just took forever. Please let this get over with,
It was pretty crazy stuff. Aubrey, let's talk about fall colors. It's got to be
guys,
the peak.
I'm not into the sport, so I just let you guys kind of conversate about that.
No, we're going to transition to fall colors. You got to be at your peak up there.
So in West Virginia, we are at peak across many counties across the Allegheny Mountains. In fact, it's amazing. I was there last Wednesday, and it's amazing how much the color changed in about 4 or 5 days. It is stunning, absolutely stunning. Virginia still has a ways to go. We're just starting to see some of the higher spots across the Blue Ridge, Skyline Drive starting to change. Typically for Virginia, our mountains really don't start to really kind of peak out until around the 20th toward maybe like the 26th, 27th-ish. Of course, your highest spots in the Blue Ridge peak a little bit early, but West Virginia, almost pretty much right on schedule across the West Virginia Allegheny Mountains. Fabulous.
And again, follow Aubrey on the gram to see some cool pictures. So what's your Instagram feed again, Aubrey? So let's promote that here.
It's at WX AUBS, AUBS travel. So posted several pictures over the weekend, some that I took from last week, some that some photographers have sent in. And I will have more this week because I'm going to make a little trip up there Wednesday before work. It's going to be a long day, but everyone's telling me it's the best color in years. So I don't want to miss out.
Ooh, okay. And by the way, Nate says he is having tech issues. He will be joining shortly. We know that Jen is out tonight, but we got to press on, Bill Murray. But Bill is in an exclusive new studio for those that are watching tonight, so with new lighting, new cameras, and a new background, Bill. So go. Let's bring in our guests before they hang up on us.
No. There's all kind of conspiracy theories about where I am, Troy. So I'll let you.
There's always conspiracy theories about where you are, Bill.
Well, is it north, south, east, or west?
Well, actually, it's center.
Oh man, Bill.
The conspiracy theory continues, but this is the view behind me is Railroad Park in Birmingham. So I'm like all those political pundits, on the Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, where they have whatever city behind them. So I need to use like some of Jeremy's pictures, Aubrey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I get some notice that my internet connection is
get you in front of a supercell.
Yeah. So now my internet connection is unstable, just in time for me to introduce our guests. But and we're missing one of our guests tonight, but that's okay because we're other guests with us. But our guest panelist tonight is an alumna of Penn State University. She did some time on television in Chattanooga, but now she's a public affair manager for the Institute, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. Christina Gropp, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bill. Great to be here with you guys tonight.
It seems like we just met like 3 or 4 weeks ago, Christina. That was like in March.
I don't think it was quite March, but it was a couple months ago. This
It
whole
was
year's
a
time
long time
warp.
ago. It
This
was
whole-
June, I guess, because we had Dr. Ian Gianmarco on the show from
We did.
your outfit, and we just figured there'd be a few hurricanes somewhere along the
Unfortunately,
way,
one or two.
and then there would be, and maybe one or two more before it's over with. But I'm not
don't
saying
say
a
that, but-
word.
oh.
I'm not. I already got in trouble for that.
I'm
so
done. I'm done on this year.
Yeah, I did. We would just call it quits for the year, but
Yeah.
now
I imagine Christina's the same way as well. Just about. Thank you, 2020. Bye. You know.
I think we've had our fill for the year. It's time to move on.
But James, you gonna Nate as he comes in here, or you want me to introduce Nate? Not that Nate needs any introduction.
No,
But-
don't introduce me. It's the worst thing you've done all night.
Welcome, Nate Johnson,
problems.
to the show. So
Today was this was the exact moment that Outlook decided it needed to re-verify my access to all of my accounts.
Oh,
That
brother.
necessitated a computer reboot and two-factor authentication and everything else. So, but I'm here.
It tends to pick the worst times to do that sort of stuff. But
At least
probably
I'm
got
using
your-
a Mac and not Windows, and I don't have to sit here and do Windows Update every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we just introduced Christina, Nate, from the Insurance Institute.
please don't let me
Business and
interrupt.
Home Safety.
This is-
So no, we're
The show is much
she's
better
our
before I
guest
got here,
panelist tonight.
so let it go.
Now, Christina, there's always this magical moment where you realize you love when we like to hear what that is. So let's be nosy for a minute and see
Well,
what that is for you.
I have loved weather since I was about 2 years old. I always said I was going to be a meteorologist. I learned to read watching the local on the 8th. I threw a tantrum before preschool if I didn't see the local on the 8th. And it was destiny. I think at age 7, I wanted an excuse to use the computer. So I went on the Weather Channel's website and searched to find where all of their meteorologists went to school and made a list by school. And most schools had 1 or 2. Penn State had 7. And I said, Mom and Dad, that's where I'm going. And trip to weather camp later, and it all worked out. And it had always been my dream to be on TV and talk to people about the weather, because I always loved to talk about it. As you can
Now,
tell.
Troy, I loved weather when I was 7 too, but I was
Yeah.
like painting my tricycle in the backyard the day Hurricane Camille came inland. There
Wow.
was not a computer in sight, so I
Yeah.
can't claim to be as technical as Christina
Yeah.
was there.
Well, Christina, how long?
Actually deputized.
Bill's kind of cutting out, Christina. Question for you: How long were you in TV?
I was in TV for 3 years right out of school.
3 years. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So you did that. I'm interested in knowing whether you enjoyed that as much, or if you kind of drifted away from that. I mean,
No.
was
She
it a
got
fun time?
smart and got out.
she's out. Yeah.
Well,
Amen.
I was going to try to be a
Amen.
little more, Nate. Try to be, allow Christina to tell us that.
No, I loved it. It was my dream come true. But then I got married. I married another meteorologist. My husband was working on his PhD at UNC Charlotte,
Yeah.
and I wanted to live with him. So I made a career change.
Well, that's great. That's great.
And,
That's
it
why
was-
I got out of TV the first time, was to live with my honey after we got married. So
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
Well,
Yeah.
and I had a viewer to ask me once. We were doing coverage of the 5th anniversary of April 27, 2011, that went through the Chattanooga area, and she was telling me her story about she and her husband and how they went to the bathroom in the interior of their home, and they got in the bathtub, and their home was destroyed, and they were still going through injuries and surgeries. So what else should we have done? And I didn't have an answer for her. And now, with the team of PhDs that I'm lucky enough to get to work with, we get to help answer that question, because at the time I didn't have an answer for her. And now if I went back to her house and talked to her again, I might have a better answer for her now.
You are officially deputized tonight as a panelist, Christina.
Thank you.
You got folks to talk to, and we want to talk a little bit about Hurricane Sally and the fortified roofs and whatever else is going on up there.
Yeah.
You guys have always got a lot of cool stuff going on, but you're one of us now. So join the chat. If you want to say something, raise your hand, ask a question, just jump in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
We're really glad to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Chris. Yeah.
And we got Scott Elmore joining us tonight. His company, Guardian Canary out of Mobile, has a new product. It's been out for several months at least.
It has
Scott, how
since
long?
middle of March.
Okay, so we wanted to put you in a hot seat a little later tonight and ask you a lot of questions about it. So
Sounds good.
You went to the University of South Alabama. You worked for the Weather Service for a time, didn't you?
I did. I worked for the National Weather Service in Goodland, Kansas for a year.
Outstanding. So
back
you were
in,
a forecaster? Was that?
Yeah, I was a meteorologist there. I guess technically back in those days they called it a meteorologist intern. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there at the Goodland office. A lot of good people there.
Well, that's outstanding. Well, for the first part of the show, for the first hour or so tonight, we're going to deputize you as a panelist because we got another really smart person on the show with us. Welcome to the show, and we'll look forward to talking to you a little bit later tonight. So you feel free to jump in too. And Dylan Steinkrueger is a PhD candidate at Penn State, right, Dylan? You're still working on that. Is that correct? Or have you already finished it? I don't know if I'm up to date on that.
That's right. Just started.
Just started.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I just finished up the master's this past May and working on the PhD now.
Fantastic. Your master's is from Penn State. Your bachelor's from Nebraska Lincoln, right?
Yep, that's right. Yep. Then I was 4 years at Nebraska as a Cornhusker, and then came out to Penn State to be a Nittany Lion, ongoing for 3 years now.
We
started football. There you go. Well, we started Football Brains before you got here, Dylan, and we try to get that out of the way. So y'all will be getting into football here shortly.
Yeah, hopefully. Nebraska is really my hope, but it's going to be a pretty rough start. I think we start out against Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Penn State. So if we can get through one of those games with a win, we'll be off to a good start. But that looks pretty hard to do.
Now, you gave an interesting talk at NWA this year during the student broadcasters. It was one of the events on Sunday. They kind of run together for me now because we had a hurricane going on at the same time.
Sure, it was a student conference, yeah.
And it was about artificial intelligence and building, your research, revolves on building guidance for forecasters in the tornado warning process, right? So take a second and kind of educate us, bring us up to speed on what artificial intelligence, machine learning really entails and what the differences are.
Sure. Yeah. So this is kind of a fun project that we've been working on. So this was initially started out as my master's project. And so our focus has been on trying to use these sort of artificial intelligence, machine learning products to predict tornadoes. And so kind of the easiest way, in my opinion, to think of a machine learning model, which is kind of a buzzword. And so maybe even artificial intelligence itself is kind of a buzzword now in the meteorological community, at least on the research side of things. And really artificial intelligence is maybe even a buzzword in society itself. It's certainly a lot of movies that are out there with, AI gone wrong, whether it's, the robots take over the world or something like that, all sorts of these things. But really kind of at a fundamental level, I've really always thought of machine learning in the context of our project as, we're really developing kind of a human forecaster that's able to ingest data, that's able to look at a storm. It could be a storm. It could also be, a hurricane, which I guess is still a storm, but any type of weather phenomena, that you're interested in, we're really trying to create basically a computer model to look at data and then make decisions, produce probabilities, produce guidance that can then be used either by forecasters or even in some cases by the public. Is really kind of the focus with the types of machine learning models or the AI systems that we're trying to build.
And so you're creating tools now that actually mimic that problem what a forecaster would do, right? Tell us how you go about that.
Sure. Yeah. So in our specific system, we're really focused on kind of the nowcasting aspect of tornadoes. So really trying to issue a tornado warning in that kind of 0 to 60-minute time frame. Basically what we do is we take in data to our computer system. That data is radar data primarily. We also use some information from soundings that come from models such as the rapid refresh model or the high resolution rapid refresh model, the HRR. Take characteristics of those storms, and these are common characteristics that forecasters use already. It's things like reflectivity, rotational velocity, and then we also feed in some images to that model as well. So the AI system is actually able to look at, does the storm have a hook echo? Is that hook echo correlated in space with kind of an enhancement in rotational velocity? And so some of these tools are actually very similar to some products that we already kind of use in our day-to-day life. If you've been on Facebook, if you ever put an image on Facebook and you scroll over somebody's face, sometimes it gives you a recommendation of who you should tag in that photo. And the way that Facebook is doing that is kind of in a very similar way to what we're doing with these types of machine learning models, where, for Facebook, they're looking at, a picture of somebody's face, they're comparing it to other pictures of other people's faces and trying to figure out who that is based on the size of their nose, the color of their eyes. In our case, we're trying to do this by looking at characteristics of the storm. I've already mentioned a few of these things. Does it have a hook echo? If it's a linear storm, does it have a kind of a bow in that line that could indicate that it might be producing or has potential to produce a tornado in the future? And so we really kind of take all this data, and that data gets fed to these models. They produce probabilities based on kind of looking at past cases. So, when you see a hook echo, a correlated area of enhanced rotational velocity, that might mean you have an increased chance of a tornado. And then through some other kind of statistics of moving some numbers around, we eventually take those probabilities and convert them into warning decisions that can then be used by a forecaster, potentially, or even by an end user, in the public as well.
So talk about what a random forest process is. Is that part of what you are doing too? Or is that in a different part of AI and machine learning?
Yeah, so a random forest is a type of machine learning model. So it's kind of there's a lot of jargon out there with some of these within the meteorological community, or kind of with the machine learning side of these things. So a random forest is kind of just a decision tree. It's kind of just a way of thinking about data. So if you were going to kind of write down a list of decisions of how you were going to decide whether or not to issue a warning, the first question you might ask is, is the maximum value of reflectivity at the lowest scan greater than 55 dBz? If the answer is yes, then okay, we're going to go over to this side and we're going to ask a new question now about those storms. Is the rotational velocity greater than 25 knots, 25 meters per second? If the answer is yes, then we're going to go to a next question. And so it's kind of this list of questions that eventually you get to the end and you say, okay, when we get this set of questions answered yes, or this set of questions answered no, typically this means this particular storm is going to produce a tornado. And so this is it's really a kind of statistical process in a way, but really it's a very kind of human process as well. As I think something that that humans do as well, whether it's a forecaster, a storm chaser. It's really just looking at these data, looking at past cases and kind of learning from kind of historical data, and really using that to process information and go through a list of decisions. And so the difference between, say, a random forest and kind of that, what I was describing previously with that image recognition, they're two very different things. So the random forest is one way that we go about doing that. And then the other one that I was kind of alluding to with the images is actually called what we use. And there's other methods of doing this as an artificial neural network to kind of look at these images as well. So two different ways of looking at the same problem, but very human-like in how they go about doing that.
So what you're doing is more like what we see with some of the CAPTCHA type things, where we have to say whether we see a stop sign in a series of 9 pictures on the screen in order to move forward. Is that sort of the same thing we're doing? We're teaching a model somewhere something when we do that. Is that the same process?
That's a kind of a good way to think about it, is that as a human, we can look at that picture and we can say, okay, this square has a stop sign, this square has a stop sign, this square doesn't. We've kind of, in our brain, we have a neural network in a way that immediately, our visual cortex picks up on these. That's words that I don't even know what they mean. That tell us, that's a stop sign and that's not. And so what we're doing with this AI system is basically training a brain in kind of a way to do that with thunderstorms. So yeah, that's a really good analogy.
But Dylan, I'm sorry, Troy. I was just going to say, this sounds a whole lot to me. And James, this is for James and Bill. This sounds like a flow chart sort of thing that maybe 30 years ago I recall one that I think National Severe Storm Forecast Center, someone had, for severe weather. It was basically yes, no, and kind of working through something like being the old fart here, I guess I could say a flow chart sort of thing, right?
Sure. Yeah. A flow chart's a good way of looking at it. The somewhat of the advantage with maybe the machine learning models is that it's able to look at a lot of them. So kind of the idea with the random forest that, right. And so with kind of one flow chart, that kind of makes what's called a tree. And so a random forest, what makes it a forest is that, we'll use say 1,000 of these flow charts. And so it's like each forecaster made their own flow chart. And now we're going to get everybody's vote on whether or not to issue a storm or to whether or not to issue a warning. Now we have 1,000 votes instead of just one. But yeah, the flow chart's another, a good way of kind of looking at how this data kind of flows through.
I was just trying to age myself, Dylan. So, I mean, but it's really cool though. You think about it, it's 1,000 flow charts, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, with what Dylan is talking about, it's something that we would never be able to do through a flow chart. He's doing it through a computer flow chart, essentially.
Yeah. I feel really old now, Troy, because I still have a little template in the back of my notebook, which is like my programming, template diagram from 1984 or something when we were still working on punch cards. So
move on, Bill. Move on.
Yeah. So talk about Aaron Hill's research, because I guess he's using random forests in that process to study whether they could actually get as good or close to as good as the SPC forecasters, right? Dylan, with their outlooks.
Yeah, right. So they're doing a very similar. They're using random forests as well, and in their focus, for what I've kind of gathered from their paper, actually I haven't talked to Aaron about this, but at least directly, they're trying to do a very similar process of creating SPC type guidance with the probabilities that you go onto the SPC website and it's slight risk, enhanced risk. And so they're trying to use random forest kind of in that same way that I just described them, except they're using very different variables, right? So in our case, we're looking at attributes of storms. In their case, I'd imagine that they're focusing a lot more on kind of the environment of storms because they're doing day, 8-hour type predictions, maybe. I think they're even doing 2-day predictions in some cases. So, the variables that you're looking at are going to be very different in some of these cases, but all of them are in a way using very similar tools, just trying to answer a different question, depending on what is of interest to that particular model or to the particular builder of that model.
So Nate, you probably did a lot of this when you were at Barron, but it's always fascinating to me how the software can identify the actual storms, and pick it out. So Dylan, you and Nate talk about that for a second. How does the software, look at that? Are they just looking for conglomerations of pixels or values in bins, or what is the, kind of the process? I've always been fascinated by that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say that storm tracking is actually a very interesting challenge in terms of some of the stuff that we're doing. So there is some products out there like a level 3 type product that is part of the WSRD-8D. NOAA puts it out. If you ever pull up RadarScope or something, you'll see on there's identified storms on there. So that's one method that NOAA has developed. At least I believe it's NOAA. At least they're the one that have kind of worked on it.
That was the original sort of storm cell identification and tracking.
The skits, right, Nate? Yeah.
And that's been in the field since the 80s. And I think, there's 100 different variations on that. And Dylan, I'm sure you can get into more detail about some of the more recent ones, but think about, just identifying something that, looks and acts like a storm. It's got a certain amount of certain, set of bins that are attached to each other that meet a certain reflectivity threshold. And there's some sort of temporal continuity to those bins. That would be a very simple thing to do. And I think that skit is part of that. But then identifying, again, things like areas of rotation where you've got either broad or whatever rotation. And then when you have those co-located, that tells you something that might be a meso or a TBS. Those are sort of basic sorts of things. And then there may be some newer things that I haven't really played in that space in detail in more than a decade. So I'm sure there's better stuff out there now.
Yeah, there's really, as far as I'm aware of, no method out there that's kind of generally accepted as the best, even kind of on the cutting edge sort of things. I mean, really the storm tracking that we do actually in our own AI system is just kind of a self-developed, and it's just as Nate described. We're basically looking at for vertically stacked levels of enhanced reflectivity and enhanced rotation. And then we just kind of integrate vertically to kind of sum values up kind of in a vertical column. And actually, this is a problem that we've been working on for the past month. It's kind of been a focal point of trying to improve our storm identification and storm tracking, but it's certainly a very ongoing area of research. And part of it is that, what's really easy to track is a supercell. The real tough storms are these linear storms where things pop up. They might be they might be there for 2, 3, 4 minutes, then they might be gone. And it's, are we going to try to track every single one of these little pulses that come up, or do we only focus on kind of the storms that might produce the stronger tornadoes in some of these cases? And so there's some trade-offs there as well.
So what type of computing power is it taking you to do all of this? It's probably pretty powerful, I would imagine, Dylan.
Yeah, so thankfully at Penn State, we have some pretty good computing resources here. So what I run on primarily is something like 100. Oh, and I don't want to mess up the wording here. It's like 100 cores. So I think my laptop is has 4 cores in it. So it'd be like running on whatever 100 divided by 4 is. So 20,
25,
40,
isn't it?
60 is like right? having about 60, probably 60 to 100 laptops running all this. You think I'd be able to do math after all this time?
Why? You got 100 cores.
Yeah, so it does. It
you,
takes some pretty serious computing.
So that's
right.
So did you have a bunch of computer science in your background when, was that one of your interests, or did you just pick it up along the way?
No, a lot of it's been picked up along the way. So I did a few things at the University of Nebraska. I think a lot of computer science is kind of in the any meteorology program right now, I think is doing a lot in kind of the computer science, at least kind of giving you a general ability to code coming out of it. And so a lot of it was picked up there, but a lot of the stuff from doing the AI stuff certainly has been from reading books and stuff once I got to Penn State and started working on the master's program.
I'm always interested in the languages. What language are y'all writing in, Dylan?
It's primarily all Python.
Oh man, I was hoping for COBOL.
Yeah, that's funny. My first computer class I took in college was COBOL, and they tried to tell me at the registrar that I couldn't take it because it wasn't the entry level class, and they didn't.
You've never been entry level in your life, Bill Murray. You don't even have to be bashful.
Well, and I said, it doesn't say that in the catalog, so they let me take it. But they just, I guess, never expected anyone in the world to walk in and say, I want to take CS 215 as my first computer class, because you started with CS 99, which I think was Fortran or something at that point in time, and I had to circle back. But I think having taken COBOL first, and having, loved it, made it that much more fun for me to go back to other languages. And lots of languages that we don't even have anymore, like PL1 and things that don't even exist anymore, that Nate probably remembers.
I've never had to program in PL1, but I've at least heard of it.
So that's pretty cool stuff, Dylan, that you're doing. It's really amazing. So talk about some of the results of, how the model, how your programs and things are doing. Are they performing pretty well? Where are they lacking? Where are they excelling, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah. So probably the one thing to delineate here. So the master's project really didn't focus on kind of doing this in real life. So we've really been working on this real life side of trying to do this with real data here in about the last 3 to 4 months, basically over the start of this summer into kind of this August, September time period. And so we've been really pleased with the results so far. We've been able to produce tornado warning guidance that is generally realistic. A lot of times issues warnings very similar to what human forecasters are issuing, which is really promising. Given the kind of as an early result. There are some situations where we see the AI system issues warnings, maybe with more lead time or even on storms that a human forecaster doesn't. And there are other times where the human forecasters, the Weather Service issue warnings with more lead time. So it's kind of a trade-off here in some ways. And one of the things that we still have a lot of exploring to do, and a lot of these results are very preliminary, is testing these on a really robust data sets. One of the areas that the AI system really struggles in is in linear convection. That unsurprisingly tends to be the same place that, I think humans tend to struggle more often than kind of with supercellular storms as well. And so, we are still trying to identify, what are some of the failure modes for the AI system? How do we take this data and kind of give it to humans as well, so that, we're probably not at this point really close to having an AI system that's skillful enough to just run on its own. It's not like a self-driving car, but really trying to suss out, what are the situations where the guidance from the AI system can actually be given to a human forecaster to assist them and produce better warning guidance. Are some of these questions that are still ongoing, but certainly preliminarily, it's been really promising to see in a lot of cases the AI system matching up very much so with what's being issued by the Weather Service.
So Dylan, can you see a day where different machines or different models could issue different warnings based on different user needs? Obviously we're moving toward that with facets and all these sort of things, but where you could have warnings spitting out that have longer lead times, or warnings that have a higher threshold for false alarm ratio or probability of detection or whatever. What else would that look like?
Yeah, that's right. And so that's really a big part of our AI system. And really our goal is that, with the AI system, we can have multiple systems running, and each of these systems can be kind of giving warnings to specific end users. So, certain end users might value lead time more than others. A hospital, maybe somebody who lives in a trailer home might value lead time more so than somebody who lives in a well-built house. And so, potentially we could have multiple of these AI systems running where, an end user who desires more lead time could potentially get a warning at a different time than, say, an end user who is just getting kind of a general public alert. And certain companies, certain private industries might have a different tolerance for false alarms or detections as well. And so all of this can be changed so that the AI system can be specifically, giving warnings depending on what a specific end user desires. And so, some of these things are difficult for potentially a human to do, for a human to kind of send out each of these unique warning sets to all of these different end users. Maybe you have 200 different end users in a city, and each of them have kind of a different tolerance for risk. Humans, it'd be difficult to have human forecasters doing that for each of those end users. With AI, we can kind of run these simultaneously, not only for tornadoes, but potentially also for other risks such as, hail, severe wind, lightning is all kind of baked into this AI system, or kind of some of the ideas that we're really exploring with this as well.
So where does it go for you next, Dylan? Where do y'all take it and how many years away is it before, you start trying to test it in an operational setting? Is it 5, 7, 8, 10 years away? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good. I'm always hesitant to sometimes give a real solid answer on this, because I feel like anytime I say I'm going to have something done by in a month or two, it seems like I have B, C, and D done, but the A that I said I was going to do didn't get finished. But I think we're really hoping to have kind of an alpha version of this product ready to go, just a very preliminary version of this. And actually, we ran a extreme preliminary version of this past spring. So I actually live in Nebraska, so I went home to my parents for a month and went out storm chasing and took it out with me. But I think we're going to have a more complete version ready to go by this spring. Hopefully, kind of do some testing on our own, and then we're really hopeful that by next April, or kind of April, May, spring of 2022, I think it would be. That we can actually get this to the hazardous weather test bed down in Norman, and hopefully start sharing this with forecasters down there and getting some of their feedback as well.
We can't hear you, Troy. I can't hear you.
Hit the mute button there, Troy.
Nah, I always forget that damn thing.
Show title.
This is
show title.
Dylan, this is probably one of the stupidest questions in the world, and we're going to get into this with Scott. And he also has that experience in the past where he said, he worked in the planes. One of my concerns is that in 2020, that the Weather Service, we have a great group of people. The men and women of the Weather Service, they do a great job for what they do. We all agree with that. But I'm going to tell you that I'm concerned that we issue too many warnings. And I will tell you that sometimes I think we issue warnings to cover our butts sometimes. And I love the Weather Service, because I'm not knocking the people down there. But what you're doing, Dylan, will that computer, and again, this is maybe a stupid question, is that computer trying to cover its butt? Will we eliminate that? I mean, obviously, if we're going down an electronic flow chart, this looking at many, many different possibilities, it seems like we get rid of that a little bit. And I don't think this is something necessarily that goes on all the time, but it worries me, because I think there are too many warnings out there. That's just what I think in 2020, with all respect to every forecaster out there. But is this something that could help to cut back on that, Dylan?
Yeah, that's a good question, and so that's something that we've talked a lot about in our research group, and it's certainly something that gets talked a lot about in the AI community. I mean, ultimately, that's the goal, right? With any of these products that we're trying to create something that would either prompt a forecaster to issue a warning if they're not going to, and there is going to be a tornado, or maybe even give them, if the AI system's not issuing a warning, to maybe give them a little bit more hesitancy to say, well, let me wait a few more scans, and maybe the threat is going to go down. It's difficult though. And it's, what we're doing with an AI system is imperfect, and it's imperfect in kind of a similar way that, human forecasters are going about this too. And it makes a lot of kind of similar mistakes sometimes that the human is doing. And so I think in some of these cases, it maybe even shows that some of these false alarms are going to be really hard to get rid of, and some of the misses are going to be very hard to get rid of, and there's a trade-off here. And I think this is a kind of a really important point that, if you go back to 2011, 2012, somewhere in there was actually change in NWS policy where they kind of changed their threshold of how they were going to issue warnings. And this is human forecasters. And what you saw was a pretty significant decrease in the probability of detection. And obviously that corresponds to also a decrease in false alarm rates as well. But there's a trade-off, right? And so if you're, everybody kind of wants a perfect forecast, but it's tough to go about that without having to trade either having higher detections versus having more false alarms. And so there's kind of the balance. The nice thing with the AI system, though, is that it can potentially parameterize this. So we could, we could reduce our POD, we could reduce our false alarms, but again, the trade-off still exists. One of them is the forecast is going to get worse for one of those statistics. There's no avoidance of that until we're perfect at predicting tornadoes in the future.
And we're not going to be that way, Dylan. I mean, my main concern with this is the people I run across that, and James hears from every week or so in the state of Alabama year round. Oh, you issued that warning. It doesn't mean anything. Nothing happened last time. Nothing happens this time. And of course, that's where we're headed in facets and looking at some of this stuff that I think will help. And I think what you're working on will end up helping. But we've got to be cognizant of how the public perceives warnings. We have got to, because we're not doing any good if people are perceiving that, that, hey, I didn't get hit this time. So, you know how it is.
Sure. And, I think
it goes back to an interdisciplinary approach between physical science and social science. And we've talked about this for years and years. And I think that's starting to happen now. But I'll give you a good example. So Saturday, we had the remnant circulation of Delta moving through the Southeast United States. And boy, that radar, you had couplets, you had spinners all through these spiral bands. And, you wonder how an AI system would handle that as opposed to a human. It would be easy to issue a dozen or 24 warnings, warning. And none of that stuff would have verified. There were no tornadoes there. So Troy's got a great point.
But let me ask you a question, James, because I didn't follow it that close. How many warnings, and I don't want to identify WFO, but how many warnings did you have out of those bands from the Weather Service in general, James, in your TV DMA? Any warnings?
Birmingham's zero, not one.
Okay.
And there was one tiny EF0 that did touch down in one county in a wooded area, and they missed it. But if they would have issued a warning for every couplet and it looked good too. I mean, it looked good. You would have probably had 24 tornado warnings, and all of them would have been false alarms.
I think this sort of folds back into a talk at NWA a couple of weeks ago from Dr. Avi Goldfarb from the University of Toronto, where talking about the role of computers and humans in this sphere, and how you look at artificial intelligence looking at radiology scans for various things, that eventually the computers are going to get better at the humans than this. And really it folds down to, what's the role for the humans in that point? And I think we're at a point now, it feels like, where we're trying to coach the AI to get as good as the human, and eventually it will take over, but it's not there yet. Is that a fair statement, Dylan, that we're not there yet, but it's useful?
I think that's a very fair statement. Yep, I think that's a great way to describe it.
Scott, you had a question?
I think that,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. Just a quick thing, you were talking about the false alarms and things of that nature. And by the way, James, Peachtree City chose to issue warnings on a lot of those, issued 21 tornado warnings and only 4 of them verified. But my question to you, Dylan, is does the AI have the ability to look at these false alarms over a period of time and learn from its mistakes, maybe pick out certain parameters that are causing these false alarms, and not to just, be the same as the human, to be different from it? Because I'm with you guys. It's a major problem, and that's really some of the basis of why our company started.
Yeah. So some of the machine learning models do some kind of this learning on their mistakes. Some things like gradient boosting, and again, it's kind of getting to the jargon of these things. But what they do is they look at what were we wrong with on this particular case, and now let's look at a different parameter space. Let's look at somewhere else within the storm that could have given us an indication that maybe there wasn't as high of a probability here as we thought. But again, it's not perfect, and the thing with AI is, AI tends to be very good at doing automated tasks that humans are already good at. Things like flipping burgers or driving cars. The tornado prediction problem is far from being well done. Even when forecasters aren't kind of in the hot seat. Even as researchers, when we go back and look at these storms, a lot of times we can't tell, why storm A produced a tornado and why storm B didn't. And so really, I think really long term of how we're going to have to improve forecasting, whether it's humans or AI, is really going to be, really delving into the research of this data and either figuring out ways to suss out the differences between these storms with data we already have, or finding new methods, whatever that might be, of delineating between these storms with new research, new technology in the future.
Christina, before you go, I want to ask something of Dylan, because, Birmingham after 2011, really went back to the science and introduced what they call polygonology. Kevin Laws, the Sioux there. Are you going to bake in, environmental factors, at some point into that process? Do you see that, getting baked into the equation somewhere along the way, so that, parameters like, LCLs and, shear and different things based on climatology get baked into the forecast?
Yeah. So we definitely do use some of those products already. So, particularly when you look at these environmental parameters, you look at something maybe like shear. One other issue kind of sometimes with these human drawn warnings is that they kind of tend to be bigger than they probably actually need to be in some cases. And again, it's not to put a bash on the weather service or anything like that. But with the AI system, we can really kind of reduce the size of these warnings, by looking at some of these parameters of shear. Are we expecting the storm to take a right-hand turn, and limit the size of these warning polygons. But yeah, certainly some of these environmental parameters are being baked in, to track out the storm in the future. But also even, things like storm relative helicity tends to be a pretty good discriminator in determining whether or not a storm is going to end up producing a tornado. So products like that are being baked in through model data currently, but could also be done through kind of meso-analysis type features in the future as well.
Dylan, as you've been working with the real-time data, how does radar coverage and the variation in radar coverage across the country factor into AI's capabilities?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't, it's kind of something that I've been looking at more closely recently. But there's definitely a difference in skill as you get further away from the radar. And there are some very significant gaps in radar coverage. And really, there's some significant gaps in places where you would be surprised at if you were thinking that we were going to align radars for where we wanted to be forecasting tornadoes for, in terms of maybe Tornado Alley. But there is definitely a decline in the skill of the machine learning models as you go further away from the radar, in terms of both maybe an increase in false alarm in some case and a decrease in POD. That's a very similar aspect that the AI system again probably has to what happens with human forecasters as well, potentially.
So Dylan, what else are y'all working on at Penn State? Dr. Markowski and all the super brains up there. You guys come up with some amazing stuff. What are some other neat things y'all are working on these days?
Yeah, so Paul Markowski, he's my advisor. He's great. He is the super brain of all of this. He's got some cool projects going on. One of the projects that they've been working on has been taking balloons actually and launching hundreds of, well, I don't know if hundreds is the right word, maybe close to 100, tens of balloons at least, into storms. And so we actually went out in 2019 in association with the Field Campaign Taurus and launched a bunch of balloons, basically looking at the thermodynamic properties, so the temperature, the moisture properties of the internals of these storms. Whereas, typically when you look at them with radar, you can only kind of get the, velocity components. You can kind of see what the wind is doing. Whereas, with what Paul's trying to do, and Elissa Bartos, she's the graduate student working on this, they're trying to look at kind of the thermodynamics inside these storms. And so that's really an area of, kind of what we mentioned earlier of, how are we going to improve warnings? Maybe we need to better understand from an observational, setting, how can we better understand these, some new observational techniques is kind of a route that Paul has taken with that. Some other students have been doing some stuff with terrain, looking at how terrain influences tornado genesis potentially. I know that's kind of a big topic down in the southern part of the United States. Some some other students are working on some things with models and trying to simulate tornadic storms in the best way possible. So a lot of work, a lot of interesting work, and kind of a lot of different facets, from observations to modeling to just tornado kind of theory in general. There's a lot of cool things going on here.
We didn't get to ask you what's your epiphany. What made you follow this crazy career path that we've all chosen at different levels? What was it for you?
Sure, yeah. So, boy, let's see. So I started out as terrified of weather when I grew up in South Central Nebraska. I remember going to my grandparents' basement. They would always have the Weather Channel on. We didn't have I don't think we had a good storm shelter at home. At least it wasn't one that my parents would want to go sit in every time the thunder would roar. So they'd send me to my grandparents' house, and I'd sit in their basement and watch the Weather Channel. And then I think, I was probably 8 or 9. I think it's May 22nd, 2004, I think is the day there was a pretty significant severe weather outbreak across the south central part of Nebraska. One of the tornadoes was actually now I'm going to forget the town, but it was, at the time, it was the widest tornado. It was 2.5 miles wide. And we also had a storm that passed fairly close to our house. And so it ended up producing a funnel cloud, ended up producing a tornado, I think maybe 10 miles further down the road. And so, of course, my dad didn't take us to the basement when that happened. He took me out to the front porch. And so I got to see it in all its power at 8 or 9 years old. And I think at that point, I was pretty well cemented in my mind that I was going to do something with weather in the future.
I'm always amazed at how few fatalities Nebraska has logged over the years in tornadoes. Not that they don't have them, but I know they're highly visible and obviously a very savvy population, but it still strikes me and it's less densely populated than a lot of other areas, I guess, but still, that's pretty amazing that there are very few fatalities from tornadoes in Nebraska. It seems like that's my recollection.
Yeah. I honestly, I can't think of too many. The only, tornado fatality that I can think of in recent years was the Pilger, twin tornadoes that happened back in 2014. That's the only one that really comes to mind. And I think, as you said, it's kind of the spread out nature of the state, of there not being a lot of condensed areas. And then, certainly maybe there's a bit of a reduction in terms of the intensity of tornadoes as you go just a little bit further north of, get out of kind of, the dry line area of south central Kansas and Oklahoma as well. Probably helps a bit too.
No shortage of big hailstones, though.
That's true.
So you've got all these students that are listening that have to admire what you're doing right now, Dylan. Give them some advice. Talk to them frankly. Tell them what they need to hear.
Sure. I love studying meteorology, and I don't know, I think there's everybody's kind of a different aspect, maybe if they're students, now you've kind of caught me off guard with what I didn't recommend. I think if you're a high school student, I think meteorology is a great field to go into. It's a fun kind of field to study. I think it has a lot of potential. I think it's really growing. If you're an undergrad, have fun with your math classes and stuff, but don't get bogged down in it as well, and kind of enjoy the ride. It's fun as you get through it. I can assure you of that. And, if you're considering grad school, I'd recommend it to anybody in a heartbeat. It's certainly a tough route to go. There's a lot of rough nights. I'll say that for sure. And there's a lot of time. I think it's easy to regret the decision to go, but I think at the end of the day, I've had an absolute blast getting to do it. So I think just enjoy it. I think that, meteorology, particularly the schooling aspect of it, is very intense. And it's just like any other science. It's a very tough route along the way, but just don't get discouraged and enjoy the ride.
All right, guys, let's take a quick break here. We're going to do Tony Rice and his astronomy report. We're going to have Jen, who is not here live, but she does have This Week in Tornado History. We will come back with the email inbox, the hot seat, pics of
week, but it continued to get brighter through tonight's opposition, the brightest until 2035. Opposition to the point in Mars' orbit where it's opposite the sun in our sky, and it's at its brightest. The next opposition will be in about 26 months, or December 8th, 2022, but it's only going to be about half as bright as tonight. That 2035 opposition, it's going to be so bright because it also coincides with perihelion, or the closest point in its orbit to the sun. Elsewhere in the sky, there's another supermoon this Friday, at least by the definition of the astrologer who coined the term originally. Don't go looking for a big bright moon, though, because the moon turns new on Friday. That still counts as super by the astrological definition. Still, it's worth looking to the crescent and new moons later this week, because they still are occurring very close to perigee, or the closest point in the moon's orbit to Earth. This makes for a great time to see a pretty cool phenomenon, Earthshine. The light we usually see coming from the moon is coming from the sun, of course. Earthshine still originates from the sun, but it is first reflected off the Earth onto that otherwise unlit portion of the moon. Usually Earthshine's very dim, but closer to perigee, it's a bit brighter, allowing you to see the rest of the moon during those crescent and new phases. Be sure to take a look later this week. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, just minutes after the high school's homecoming parade, a devastating twister demolished a large section of Belmont, Iowa. The total path was approximately 12 miles. It was given a rating of F5 and is the only F5 or EF5 on record during the month of October. Per storm data, 109 homes and 75 businesses were destroyed. 27 farmsteads were struck, and many of those were demolished. There was a great loss of cattle, hogs, and chickens, and acres of corn were flattened. 6 people were killed and over 150 were injured. I found an amazing story on the Flickr page for the Girl Scouts of Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois Archives. Cadet Troop Number 103 in Conrad, Iowa wanted to help the people of Belmont in any way that they could. They sent several letters and finally heard back from one of their former Girl Scout leaders. She told them the story of Tammy Nelson. This 8-year-old girl had open heart surgery about a year and a half before the tornado came through her town, and her family's home was completely destroyed by this twister. After hearing her story, the troop from Conrad decided to adopt Tammy. They traveled to visit her family and see the devastation. The young girls in the troop donated clothes to Tammy and replaced some of her doll's clothing as well. We will be updating this summary over the next few weeks to include more eyewitness stories and pictures given to us by the Belmont Historical Museum. We are very excited to partner with them. Look for updates from us on social media and at tornadotalk.com.
Thank you, Jen and Tony. James, do you think we'll still be doing this show in 2035 when Mars is at opposition again? You think there's any?
Yeah, we're just getting started here. Come on. Yeah.
What show number will we be on then? Like 1500 or something?
Probably 2722.
Oh my goodness. Well, Bruce Jones, it's that time of the week where we get to talk to you. And I thought about you just a second ago because I bet somewhere on that library shelf behind you there is the book Tornadoes of Iowa somewhere. I think you would, a little thin book, great tornado case studies.
It may be over there. I'll tell you one interesting one that I have is Tornadoes by Jp Finley. And this is the one where he outlined some plans for how to build your own tornado shelter. And there's one.
What was that written in like 1888 or something?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Let me see if I can get this. This is a picture. This is tornado at Auburn, Alabama, April 15, 1884. Ruins of a building.
My goodness, Christina's going to come and take that book away from you.
It's a nice little book called Tornadoes by Finley, and
you better go put that back in the safe when you get through with it.
Yeah, you know, in this book, I think he was maybe the first one to say go to the southwest corner of the basement because that's in here.
No,
assuming the house would get blown, away from you
that way.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was one of those things that was a safety rule when I was a kid.
For a long time.
Well, good. Well, Bruce, we got you here tonight as we always do, and we love talking about NOAA Weather Radio. It's a part of it should be a part of everyone's warning toolkit. And I know we preach to the choir a lot on the show, but we need to be all ambassadors of that process. So
absolutely,
arm us with some wisdom here where we can go out and be better ambassadors of the program.
Okay, well, there's a 1,031 transmitters nationwide now. So the number is 1,031. 4 of those are Spanish language transmitters. So, of course, most of them, the majority of them are in the English language, but we do have 4 of them. I think one down near San Diego. We've got one down in Texas and one down in Hialeah, Florida. And there's another one in there that I've lost track of somewhere. But we do have some Spanish language transmitters because remember the Saragossa, Texas tornado?
Yep.
Troy, you can talk about the problem there. The language issue was huge in Saragossa. So we've got some Spanish language transmitters. The Canadians use the same series of frequencies that we do. In Canada, they'll broadcast the message first in English and then follow it in the same message in French. Or in Quebec, they do it opposite. They come out French first and then English. So the system of these 7 NOAA frequencies is used in the US and Canada. And in Mexico, they actually use those frequencies for their earthquake warning system.
Really?
Yeah, those same broadcast frequencies are used for earthquake warnings. So when they get the very first hint that there's an earthquake, maybe out on the Pacific coast, they can send a warning to these little receivers in Mexico City and let them know that there's a possibility of shaking in Mexico City in a few seconds. And, sometimes seconds make all the difference. I'm wearing today my drop, cover, and hold on t-shirt because, we've got the great shakeout coming up this Thursday, and that's earthquake safety. So I deal with emergency managers talking about weather safety and NOAA weather radio. And then we also kind of translate on into earthquake safety, wildfire safety. As we've said before, America has more dangerous stuff in it than any other place on the planet. The tornadoes, the blizzards, the hurricanes, the everything. So we're a nation that really needs to be weather ready and disaster ready. And I appreciate the fact that those of you who listen to this show get out and preach this time and time again, year after year. Because remember, we have to constantly remind people of the difference between a watch and a warning, constantly remind them to know what county they live in, and constantly remind them to have more than one way of receiving these life-saving warnings. So if you listen to the show, if you go to midlandusa.com, you get 15% off on a weather radio purchase. And we've got Christmas coming up not too far off in the future, and weather radios make a great Christmas present. If you use the promo code SPAN15, that's SPANN15, SPAN15, you get 15% off your order of weather radios at midlandusa.com. So that's our little sell for the Midland weather radios. My sell for weather radios in general is that every home, school, and business in America should have one of these devices. I don't care what brand you buy, but for corn's sake, please get one. Encourage your family, encourage your friends, and spread the word so that we can indeed build a weather-ready nation.
Don't forget the Dixie Alley tornado season is less than 1 month away. Yep. November is almost here, so now's the time to get ready.
Yep.
Don't wait till Christmas.
I just wrote a blog for the snowbirds that go down to Florida. I don't know if they posted it on the Midland website today or not, talking about the February tornadoes in Florida. People go down there in their RV and their camper and forget the fact that they can, especially during an El Nino year, can get those February nocturnal tornadoes in central Florida that can be extremely deadly. So we remind people, if you have an RV or a camper, you also need to have a NOAA weather radio in there, especially if you're in a location like Florida that you're not used to the winter weather patterns.
Well, Bruce, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you to Midland and you for sponsoring us and helping us be on the air, and we appreciate that very much.
Happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Being a huge part of the show. So, all right. Well, and now we want to talk to Scott for a few minutes, because Scott's got a product that we just talked about, weather radio, which is a huge part of, the warning process. And Scott, you got something new that you're promoting. So talk about your new product and how it works and what makes it different. What's your elevator pitch for us?
Okay, so what we've come out with is a system called ITAS. ITAS stands for Imminent Tornado Alerting Service. And essentially what our software does is it filters all National Weather Service tornado warnings, and it decides based on its given criteria what's an imminent tornado warning that needs to be alerted on. So it's only going to alert our customers if it's a confirmed or observed tornado, if it carries a tornado damage threat tag of catastrophic or considerable. And then we have other parameters set for it during the nighttime hours. We have a nocturnal tornado index that if certain thresholds are met through environmental parameters and SPC risk areas, that it will allow certain alerts to go through. So our customers sign up. They're allowed to put in 4 phone numbers for their home address or their business address. This is not cell tower based. This is based on the GPS location of their home or business. And it alerts the same polygon, just like the National Weather Service puts out. The reason we're doing this is to cut down on the false alarms. We will not typically issue or allow an alert to go out on a radar indicated only tornado warning.
So you're sending out fewer warnings and filtering out some of the Weather Service warnings in the process. And I'm sure you're telling your customer that on the front end, because it would be important that they knew that.
Certainly.
Bruce is sending every warning out.
That's correct.
It would be really critical that they knew that.
We would never tell anybody to ignore a National Weather Service tornado warning. If they're alerted, they need to take action to protect their life. What we're doing is trying to give some confidence in this. This is kind of your oh crap moment. When you get an ITAS alert, there's no more thinking. There's no more listening for a siren. It's time to take action. You go then. And we're just trying to alleviate a little bit of that, that thought process to really get folks to take action when they receive one of our alerts.
Hey, Scott, Troy here.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Let me ask you a question that just came to my mind, and this should scare the hell out of everybody here. But the bottom line is this. Is there a lower threshold that might keep Scott awake at night if you had a customer that might live in a mobile home or something like that, where the lower threshold might be important, just the warning maybe with not the considerable or without the catastrophic tag? Is there anything that worries you at the least about that?
Certainly. We want to, and then the overnight hours, if there's a risk level that's established by the SPC, that's our indicator to kick off our index. And if thresholds are met, we use 5 different computer models, and we're looking at 10 different convective parameters to, ensure that if we need to green light, warnings, let's say from the Birmingham office from the sleeping hours of 10 to 6 at night, we're going to do that. We want to protect our customers. But what we're trying to do is, there's too many times, like we discussed earlier, too many warnings are being issued. Through, September 30th, there's been over 1,900 tornado warnings issued. 1,400 of those were false alarms. They weren't verified. So we're trying to take that bit out of it. We're never going to just throw out a blanket one, but we're definitely going to protect our customers where we need to.
Can I ask you one other question, and really a loaded question I'm going to ask you, Scott?
No.
But okay.
All right.
Do you get the feel, and I'm just trying to find somebody that maybe has kind of heard some of the things that I'm hearing, that there is less importance in 2020 than maybe there was in 2014 or 15 about the false alarm ratio? I've sort of been hearing lately that's at least some people are feeling like we're not going to worry that much about it. If we have to issue a warning, we'll do it. If it doesn't verify, the public will forgive us. I've heard that.
I think we've also got to keep in mind too, a lot of these tornado warnings may not have been verified because of the early ongoings of COVID. If you look in the April and May, granted May wasn't very, very busy, but April was, that was the beginning of COVID. Everybody was scared to death. You're social distancing, you're staying at home, you're quarantining. So I think that played a little bit into it. But if you look at this, through this year so far, National Weather Service tornado warnings have verified 26% of the time. From 2014 to 2019, they only verified 22% of the time. So we're still within that same range. I mean, let's not fool ourselves. I mean, National Weather Service does a fantastic job, and please don't take that. I love the National Weather Service. I'm just saying that, there's far too many being put out, and we've got to find a way to cut down on this false alarm rate to get the public to take action. And that's one of the reasons that we've launched ITAS.
So, Scott, do you watch for that severe weather statement that changes that tag?
Yes.
So if you get a new tornado warning, it might not have those tags, but they might get added or changed along the way.
We filter for every tornado warning and every SVS that's issued by the National Weather Service. So if they put out one that's just radar indicated, it tightens up, they get a report, whatever. We immediately when they put that SVS out, ITAS sends out the alerts to our customers that are still within that polygon.
Now, so you only send tornado warnings. Do you send severe thunderstorm warnings, flash flood warnings, anything else?
Unlike the National Weather Service, where their mission statement is to protect property and life, we only care about life. So, typically a severe thunderstorm warning, unless it's a derecho, something like that, you're not going to have, the threat to your life per se that you'll get with a tornado warning.
Now, does your end user have to sign something that says they understand these?
Well, I mean, like with anything, there's you understand that there's faults in the system, and like with anything else, we have terms of agreement and things like that you'd click when you sign up. But there's risk and regular tornado warnings issued by the National Weather Service as well. So,
but at least you can stand behind the Weather Service. Yeah. You say we just passed it along.
Well, that's true, and obviously
you didn't miss the warning, or not get it out.
That's true, and obviously, as a company, we're insured, against things like that. But we try to make it very clear to our customers what we're trying to do, and the way that ITAS works, and that you're not going to get every tornado warning. I mean, we've had customers say, "Hey, I had a tornado warning in my area. Why didn't I get an ITAS alert?" And we very quickly point out to them, well, it's because it was not confirmed, it was not observed, didn't meet our other thresholds, and you didn't have any damage reported, and that tornado warning was not verified, and that's what we're trying to cut down on.
Are you doing any post surveys to look at the number of verified tornadoes and whether or not any of those warnings slip through your system?
Yes, definitely. We definitely keep up. And as far as missed, like obviously tornado warnings that were radar indicated that verified that we did not alert on, certainly we keep a track of that. There is a number of those, but one thing that I try to keep track of is the number of warnings that slipped through that produced injuries or fatalities. And so far, since the system has been running, there's only been one instance where ITAS did not alert on a tornado that produced a fatality, and that was due to a mobile home incident in Louisiana. We're still investigating that at this time, but there's gonna be tornado warnings that verify that we don't get. But let's also keep in mind too that a lot of those verified tornadoes are EF0 and EF1s. They're not producing injuries or fatalities most of the time.
Well, what's your probability of detection? What's your POD?
It's anywhere from 66 to 70% right now. We verify very well. If you think about it, if you take out the Nocturnal tornado index, if it's confirmed, observed, or carries that damage threat and is radar confirmed, it should be closer to 90%, 95%. But of course, it's not. But yeah, we're go ahead.
So if I sign up for this thing, how do you alert me?
You're alerted via. We send you instructions on how to set up a contact in your phone. To make sure that you've selected a ringtone. It's the old school alarm ringtone on an iPhone. You make sure that you set it up to where you do not you don't have it excluded from your do not disturb list, where you will get it if you're asleep at night. And it's a direct.
Is this a phone call or a text message, or what is it?
It's a text message. It's via text message. And we send you the instructions on how to set that contact up in your phone to where your text alert is actually a ringtone in your iPhone. So it goes off long enough to wake you up at night.
And how long? Bypass the do not disturb.
Yeah, it does bypass the do not disturb. It goes off for 5 to 10 seconds. It depends on how quick you grab it and turn it off. But it goes off long enough to wake you up. It will wake you up.
No, man.
My wife will tell you 10 seconds is not long enough to wake me up.
No. That ain't.
But you could custom ringtone, text tone.
You can do whatever you know is going to get your attention at night. We would recommend that you do that. But the way that we have it set up, I mean, it wakes me up. I'm not the heaviest sleeper, but I'm not a light sleeper as well. But it seems to do the job. I mean, for the response we've had from our customers has been very good.
Well, Scott, I want to say this should be a secondary program, but you're trying to say it should be a primary program because people are getting so many false alarms, they're turning off their system. So
I don't
respond to that.
I don't see us as a primary. I see us as a supplement. I see it as giving you that confidence that you got in the closet or in your basement and you did the right thing. It's coming. Or it can be used, and I'm not trying to be stereotype here, but it's for the wife to say, hey, honey, I just got an eye test alert. Get off the couch. We're going downstairs. You know, that type of thing to give you that confidence, because if you get it from us, it should be that a tornado is there.
So how fast are your alerts getting to folks based on your experience?
Milliseconds.
How many
milliseconds? We're lined up with the National Weather Wire Service. We get our feed direct. It is very quick. It's almost, I won't say it's as quick as wireless emergency alerts, but it's a few seconds behind that.
So it should be a few seconds behind the weather radio or the WIA or
correct
any of those things, and it's going to provide confirmation.
Sure,
that this is a serious warning.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's talk about you're marketing this to TV stations.
Yes, we started that today. Thanks for bringing that up, James.
So you know, so let's say, all right, I subscribe to your service and I'm, you know, there's a tornado warning and your system says, well, it's bogus, you know, and so all the other stations are on the air and I'm not on the air. How do you?
Oh, no. That's not.
No,
that's not how we'd use it as far as your station goes. The way I would use it, and we did some demo videos with some students from the University of South Alabama. You can find them on our YouTube channel, but they gave a demo video of how you can use it in severe weather coverage, where you'd be like, you know, National Weather Service has got this tornado warning out. It's radar indicated right now. And then they show later on in the video, you know, obviously it's not real time, but a few seconds later, alarm goes off in the studio, and they used the on ground alert because we can customize it to any television station. It goes off, and then that gives you that extra set of urgency. It gives you to help you build that confidence with the viewer that yes, I'm giving you the National Weather Service tornado warning, but I'm also giving you this other added on, you know, on ground alert or ITAS alert that you've got to go now. And I think that will help build some confidence, and you know, in certain markets, it'll give, you know, some stations a leg up on the others to have, you know, that available to them, because we'll still send a text to everybody, and you can still use those in your coverage.
So Scott, this is not. I mean, James Spann still does what James Spann does on ABC 3340,
and he should. He does a fantastic job,
and he does a great job. So you're seeing it even as a supplement to the service the excellent service that James Spann does in Alabama.
Certainly, because if you had it and it's through the station, not only are you getting the viewers that are watching you, you're giving it to the people that are not able to watch you or aren't watching you at that time. It's still coming from the station. It's still giving them that extra added, hey, you better go now.
What am I getting if I'm using this as a TV station and I'm doing radar analysis? I'm watching the weather wire feed. I'm looking at all of this. The graphic systems are getting to the point where they're coloring the warnings differently now based on impact tags.
Sure.
What are you giving us that I don't already have?
I'm giving you the mold that's already made. I'm giving you the ability to already have, it's a seamless transition where you can incorporate this into your app or to your website, where the sign up page could just be fed into our database, or we can set the database up for you. It's a way to get more viewers. It's a way to build up that confidence in the viewers that you have. It's already pre-made. You don't have to do anything special. We've got it made for you.
So it's not, who are these guys for the WeatherBrains regulars here? Who are the guys that we had on the show a few years ago that were claiming an FAR of 0 and a POD of 100? And they wanted
was that
sell
the Weather Loop? Was that group out of Dallas?
Yeah.
Or out of Texas?
They were out of Florida, and they sold it to WFAA
it was a station
in Dallas.
It's a station in Dallas that was using it.
Right. That was Met Loop, I think, or Weather
Yeah,
Loop,
that's
or
right.
Met Loop,
That's
or
right.
something.
Met Loop. Yeah.
Or
How
a
is
zero.
that working out?
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
they don't
Using it
exist
Just
anymore.
asking. Yeah.
And Nate,
but-
if I can go back to Nate's question for just a second, one other thing that you do get from us is you get the Nocturnal Tornado Index. And I know it's not a Torcon, it's based on science. It's based on, nocturnal tornado genesis papers and research. It's based in science. And so you have that extra added confidence built in the overnight hours. It verifies between 55 and 60% of the time. So, that is, April 22nd, 23rd, when Louisiana had some tornadoes kicking through, we verified 11 of 17 on the alerts that we issued when we greenlit the warnings based on the Nocturnal Tornado Index. So you do get that added benefit as well.
I mean, I looking at the email that you sent out to Broadcast Mets, you mentioned 10 parameters and 5 different models during sleeping hours.
Yes.
It just feels a little hand wavy to me. It's like, I mean, which parameters, which models? Yeah, I have some. I mean, I think
I understand. Go ahead.
My heartburn over this, and I'm not the folks insuring this, so take it for what it is. My heartburn over this feels like, number one, the nighttime stuff has to be triggered by an SPC risk level, and we know that the 2%, which is the smallest contour they draw, doesn't mean you won't have tornadoes outside of that. We do have a few of them here in North Carolina over the years. So we wouldn't even get to the NTI at all, if I understand correctly, without some sort of an SPC risk. And then the NTI, and I get, if this is something that's custom, if you're working on a patent or whatever, you can't let too much of the secret sauce out. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, send an email out and it's like, well, we're looking at parameters. I mean, anybody can. I mean, these models are available on the internet.
Well, no, Nate, I totally agree with you. I will say this, though, that any station that expressed interest in wanting to know the secret sauce, I'll share it with them with the NDA. I have no problem whatsoever doing that. I'm confident in what we've come up with, and I'm confident that it works. But I see what you're saying. I say 5 model, 10 parameters. I mean, I could be looking at the sweat index for all you know. Obviously, I'm not looking at the sweat index, but you know what I mean. And
I'm a totals guy. I mean, forget the sweat index. Sweat index is only when I run.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that the thing that I worry about with stuff like this is you're packaging this as better than the Weather Service warning. I mean, I think that's the point, right? The Weather Service warnings, there are too many false alarms. 1,400 out of 1,900, were false alarms, and we're better than that. But in addition to all of the tornadoes that we know the Weather Service misses from time to time, which they do, and that's just the nature of the beast, right? You've also built in on top of this system things that, the NTI is going to have to be triggered in the middle of the night by an SPC outlook that is, by its own admission, going to miss about 2% of possible tornadoes in a given area. It may be based in science, but it's not peer reviewed. The process that you've come up with isn't peer reviewed yet. You don't have a long track record here. And by your own admission, there's already one tornado that slipped through that killed somebody. That gives me a lot of heartburn.
I understand, but I think one thing that you're missing here is that I'm not trying to be a primary. I'm trying to be a supplement. Everyone should always adhere the warning of the National Weather Service. I'm trying to give that extra layer of confidence. That's it. I'm not trying to be the primary. And I think maybe that's where some of your angst is coming from.
I think that we have the same angst with tornado emergencies. And I think a lot of folks in this sphere have that angst because when you talk about tornado emergencies, they're supposed to be, this is supposed to be it. The high end of a high end, it's bad. Well, number one, we know that we've had tornado emergencies on tornadoes that didn't quite pan out as badly as they looked like they would have, which is great at the end of the day. But at the same time, if you have a tornado emergency as the high end of your scale, then all of a sudden you've pushed everything else down.
Yeah.
By virtue of just having something at the top end, you created a new top end. Everything else gets pushed down in relative importance. And so if everything's important, nothing's important. And I worry that, I hear you. There are probably too many tornado warnings. I think that some of the things that we've seen with the Birmingham office, for example, with QLCS spin, it's easy for me to say, and I think, maybe some of these low end EF0 tornadoes that maybe are more severe thunderstorm warning, like damage levels, do those need a full blown tornado warning with an hour and a half of wall to wall coverage? I think those are some deep conversations that we probably ought to have. But I have some concerns anytime we start, and I had the same concerns with the tornado emergency. We added another layer at the top. We've taken it to 11, going back to this is Spinal Tap, right? We've gone to 11. Well, now 10 doesn't mean quite as much anymore. And I have some concerns about that. Plus, I think when we talk about false alarms, 1,400 false alarms. Okay, we didn't get a tornado, but how many of those did damage? How many of those ripped the roof off because of, downdraft winds? How many of those, or just the classic, it was a bad storm, right? We had a thunderstorm here probably 6 or 7 years ago that rolled through this area, middle of June, 8:00 at night, putting down 3,000 lightning strikes an hour, but not severe. No wind, no tornado, none of the normal trick things. And our phones lit up. People were wondering why we weren't on. And it was because it wasn't a warning. It didn't meet the threshold. So I think, when we talk about false alarms, that doesn't necessarily mean that the storm wasn't bad or that it didn't get people's attention. And so I worry, I like the idea, but at the same time, I have some heartburn about rolling this out.
I understand. But one thing I'll also say too, I will agree with you to some extent that, even in the storms where, we consider them to be false alarms because they're not verified, that's, it could have produced or been a bad storm like you're talking about. But it's also in the mindset that we're doing to the public. I mean, keep telling people over and over and over. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, we've got to find a better way.
Well, Scott, Nate, I won't argue with you, but we are talking about tornado warnings here. And that's one thing that I look at is that we're talking about tornado warnings. And so people are looking for what? They're looking for tornadoes. That's what they're being warned for. There's severe thunderstorm warning and there's everything else, but we are talking.
And sometimes you'll have one inside the other, right? We see that from time to time.
I agree.
I think that the heartburn here is, again, we're sort of framing something as this is based on the Weather Service, but we're positioning it as better than the Weather Service in that we're only going to send them to you when it's really happening. And I think one other piece of this, I chased a rabbit for a second. You take a typical tornado warning, right?
Sure.
If you have a mile-wide tornado and a typical tornado warning that wants to run into the other, you're still going to have 85% of that tornado warned area that never saw any tornado. It's sort of that, Kim is not here tonight, but, she talks about how even in an EF5 tornado, that only 1 or 2% of the damage path will see EF5 winds, or EF5 damage. That doesn't mean that it wasn't bad anywhere else, but, I think we start talking about even in a tornado warning, you have false alarm area that we have to account for. And I think in those cases, again, it's bad, right? If you're in a tornado warning, you're probably not in a tornado warning because it's sunny and quiet outside.
Right.
So I get that. But I think anytime we position something, that, the Weather Service issues warnings and there's, you mentioned it, in answering one of the questions before, you have insurance for this. The government doesn't have to have insurance. Private companies, anytime we get into this, it sort of opens the door, and that's would be a concern. So
duly noted.
I mean, I'm not here to trash you. I think we got to innovate. I think
we've got to. That's what we're doing. And the way this came about, ITAS was being developed for another project that we have going on that we'll be using down the road. But it worked so well and verified so well. We're like, crap, we're going to roll this out to the public, and that's what we've done. And we've done our best to give it features that make it, give you as much confidence in the alerts as you can. But there has to be something different. We can't keep, we can't keep doing things the same way we're doing. I mean, all the people that died in Tennessee this year, why? I can't, anyways. But yeah, I'm with you. There needs to be something different done.
But Scott, but again, you're selling this not as primary. You're selling this as a supplement. which I appreciate, because it'd be very easy to come on here or go somewhere else and say, hey, we're going to beat everybody. And, and we don't want you using anybody else. And by the way, you've seen that. We've seen that in other cases around this country before. And by the way, if you don't think, listen to what Nate is saying here. If you don't think you want, go out and issue a tornado warning sometime, and you'll get to meet a few lawyers along the way, because the government enjoys that protection. Yes. Private companies do not. And you're not doing anything. All you're doing is pushing out Weather Service warnings, essentially, that meet a certain criteria, right?
That is correct. Okay. That's exactly right.
Hey, Scott, what are you going to do when facets begins to roll out, when the Weather Service goes to probabilistic tornado warnings?
I don't know. We ever going to get to that?
Yeah, man.
I've been hearing that for years, haven't you? I don't know. We will, let's put it this way. We will be addressing it as we go forward through this year, next year. But there again with facets, the false alarm rate, we'll address it down the road. But until I see it actually coming out, I mean, I hadn't seen it.
And Scott, I had the chance to go, as some of us did, to the test bed and work there for a week and see that. And what Kim has done and the colleagues over Norman's really amazing. But you've got to admit, come get me. I guess I'll be audited by the IRS. This moves in damn government time, which means that anywhere else in private sector, it'd work in a year. It's going to take the government at least 10 years. Yeah. I mean, it's just admit it. Okay.
It's going to take a while.
This is the way it happens. Okay.
Yeah. Dylan may have it going before then. He may.
Yeah, there you go.
He may have it by April. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting, in comparison, Dylan, talked about a model tonight, one of his AI models that would, allow you to vary that threshold value for false alarm ratio. So
yeah,
but that's a whole different thing. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, but I think the key thing we've heard tonight, Scott, is that, like Troy has mentioned here, this is just a supplemental data source that kind of works hand in hand with the Weather Service. Have you had any open discussions with Weather Service offices about your products and services and what you're trying to do to maybe just kind of let them know?
No, I haven't, not yet. I mean, obviously, through the majority of the summer, we've been cooped up like everybody else, quarantine and things of that nature. I do plan on reaching out. I think what iTest is being made for, or was made for, will help bring up even more discussions in the way that we want to alert communities as a whole, and also will play a part in some of the things we've got going down the road with beach safety and things along those lines. I saw where Morgan Berry from the Mobile office posted that 2 people died from rip currents, again, here recently. And we've got some things coming down the pipeline that we believe are going to help with those type of events as well.
And why the Guardian Canary?
Think of it kind of as the Guardian in the old coal mine. It warned you when it died.
It didn't end well for the canary, though, did it?
No, but it did it. No, but it did save lives.
Fair point. Fair point.
Hey, Bill, we need to get you a cool background like Scott's got there.
Hey, you like that? My stepmom did that for me before I came on. That's pretty cool.
I'll have one next week rather than
there you go.
Handling here.
Scott, do you do any collaboration with the University of South Alabama while you're there in this business?
Well, like I said, we reached out to 4 of their senior broadcast students, and they help us compile some of those demo videos that we released today. I keep in contact with them just because, obviously that's my alma mater. I love the guys there. I think the program is top notch, and the way that they're bringing along the broadcast program there to go along side by side with the operational, I think they're doing a phenomenal job, and we'll continue to collaborate with them on other projects and things of that nature.
And do you plan on trying to sell this to the emergency management community at all?
We've been campaigning to them as well. We're that's one way we're trying to get it out. We have reached out to numerous emergency managers, especially in the Southeast, of how we can equip their communities with ITAS. Even as far as giving them a break for their communities, having some type of profit sharing. They can use monies to where they see fit in their communities. Just kind of getting crickets in that area, to be totally honest with you. We've had better response with the public, and so far with the broadcast campaign, we've had very good response so far today. But we would love to get into that type of venture with them as well.
Scott, let me throw one at you. Have you had any contact with the people? A lot of times, emergency management, and I work closely with them here in Texas, in Austin. But a lot of times they deal with the messaging or the alert companies like Everbridge. And people like
Code
that.
Red. We've seen a lot of that.
Yeah. And are you dealing at all? Have you talked to those people? Because I'm wondering if talking to those people may be your en route back to the emergency managers. The one thing I worry about, I think Everbridge is a great company. We work with them closely at University of Texas, but they'll tell you they're going to forward the warnings as they come out. Every one of them, if they roll out, and that worries me a little bit. And I'm just wondering maybe if the messaging companies might be a way to go too.
We haven't reached out to them, Troy. That's a great idea. We have looked at some of the services that they provide to other communities, as far as emergency management and things like that. But, maybe that's an avenue we need to pursue as well.
All right. So we need to pause here. But anyway, thanks, Scott. We have to do picks of the week and the weather roundup. But let's quickly go back. Nate, you were the winner last week on the Hurricane Delta landfall contest. So what do we need to give Nate here?
I'm sorry. I feel terrible about
because
that.
I predicted it 2 weeks in advance and got in trouble.
Hey, Bill, the best
3
thing
weeks
that happened
advance.
last week with me was that James forgot to ask me. He completely
Good.
of everyone. He left me out. I walked out of that show last week so happy. I didn't know what to do. You forgot all about me, James.
What would you have, Troy? Now be honest. What were you going to say? What were you going to say?
I wouldn't tell you if I even thought of it right now. I'm not going to tell you.
Now, I was off in some la-la land with past Christian, Mississippi, and so Nate was the winner. We'll give him a
winner is not the right word here.
It's not right.
No. And we also, I think most everybody was on the intensity. They got that right. I mean, most folks were up at 140, 145. Yeah. So, but the landfall point, and during the show, as I recall, it was still in the Caribbean, wasn't it? Last Monday night.
Yeah.
So, Nate, you are now our new John Hope, our tropical expert on the show. So,
and guys, our thoughts and our prayers. If you live in Calcasieu Parish, Cameron Parish, Vermilion Parish, there in southern Louisiana, God bless you. And I just hope. I just can't even imagine. Cannot even imagine.
Mm-mm.
This year.
It's tough, and goodness, it's tough, and our friends in Florida are still suffering from Michael from 2 years ago.
Yep.
And this is something you just don't dig out of this in a few weeks. A lot of infrastructure has to be rebuilt, and you've got in many cases a humanitarian crisis with people that are homeless and low-income families that don't have any resources or any relatives or anywhere to go, and it's a big mess. And,
well, I'll tell you one other thing, James, that we need to mention, and I don't have a pick of the week, so I get the foghorn anyway, but let me tell you another thing. Salute to our friends Andy and everyone at the weather office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. They hung around during this one, and they worked this one, and I'll tell you, hats off to those men and women at the weather service in Lake Charles. KPLC, one of the TV stations in Lake Charles, they covered it as well, and doing the Lord's work.
Yep.
All right, James, you want me to take it, or can you?
Yeah, Bill, go.
All right, here we go. Well, weather roundup. What are we going to talk about nationally? We've got a cold front coming our way. It's not going to put us at least back into some refreshing air here, but we'll be in the 60s for highs by the weekend. Nate, are y'all going to get some of that good cool air too by the weekend?
Yes. That's my sincere hope. I think we're supposed to have highs in the 60s and lows in the 40s, maybe even upper 30s in some areas as we head to this weekend. NC State hosting Duke at Carter Finley at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. Going to be good football weather for the 4,000 or so people that will come in and watch that one first.
So Troy, how hot is it in Austin tonight?
Yesterday, Camp Mabry, 99 degrees yesterday. We broke an all-time record high yesterday. We had a cold front this morning that blew in at about 9 or 10 o'clock this morning, and we went to 6 miles in blowing dust out at Austin Bergstrom.
Yes.
Completely, by the way. On the radio this morning, said, here comes the cold front. The winds are going to pick up. Our visibility dropped. There was no warning. We really weren't getting good surface reports upstream. But we went to 6 miles in blowing dust for the latter part of the morning, and then it's managed to kind of settle out tonight. Cold front later in the week, Friday, Saturday, highs in the 70s, lows in the 50s, hot tub weather in Austin, Texas.
So Troy, what town did you grow up in Mississippi?
What's that?
What town was it that you grew up in Mississippi?
Oh, up in Alcorn County. In Corinth, Mississippi. In the northeast part of the state.
Cold front probably just came through your hometown.
Yeah, I actually saw pictures of it in Collierville, Tennessee early this evening as it passed. So, yeah, that front passed here mid-morning and passed up there this evening. Well,
Christina, I guess you're in North Carolina, right? Or South Carolina?
Right on the border, just south of Charlotte.
Yeah. Just split the difference.
Which Carolina are you in? Are you in vinegar country or mustard?
I am in South Carolina.
Mustard.
So I didn't really answer the question there, Nate.
I'm gonna have to mute for the rest of the chat now.
Are you in Eastern North Carolina or Western North Carolina? Are you vinegar? Or are you ketchup? Or tomato?
Yes. Raleigh rides the line, baby. We get the best of both worlds. Actually, we get the best of one
here.
This became barbecue brains.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we became. Well, Christina, we're glad to have you here tonight. And so talk about, I know we want to hear about how the fortified roofs held up in Hurricane Sally here in Alabama, because there are quite a few of those. And then talk about any other goings on, up at your shop that we need to know about.
Yeah, thank you for the chance to bring you up to speed on our fortified roofs. And you had Dr. Angie Manko on earlier this year talking about the program, and Hurricane Sally put about 16,000 of them to the test down in Mobile and Baldwin counties. It's our highest concentration of fortified homes, and what IBHS really has done is look at a better way to build a house, a better way to build a roof. To stop that cascade of damage that impacts so many families. I mean, Scott, you're talking about the tornadoes that take lives, but the vast majority of tornadoes and hurricanes and storms just do that damage to the roof that displaces a family and causes financial loss that takes them so long to recover from. And it's really some simple things that can make that roof stronger and stop that in its tracks. And we had a team of folks that made it down to Alabama despite the pandemic to take a look at some of our roofs. And, a couple of houses had dings on the siding from some flying debris, 1 or 2 lost shingles. But because of the way the fortified roof system is designed, they're able to stay in their home. And hearing from these homeowners who are telling us about sleeping in their dry bed the night after a hurricane made landfall, it gives me chills, because if we could be telling more stories like that, it would be a great day if that was the norm after a hurricane. Even if you have to replace 1 or 2 shingles, if you can stay in your home, get your life back right as soon as power goes back on, that would be a great thing. So we were excited to see that, and we've also had our wildfire folks out surveying the damage from the glass fire out in California. They've been out there this past week and talking to homeowners on the wildfire side of things, some things you can do to your home to help protect it from wildfires. Nothing is natural disaster proof, but there are just these little steps that we can take that really do make a difference. And if we can start to make some of these things the norm, we can really make a difference, I think.
So, Christina, I was heartbroken to, see some of the drone footage as Hurricane Delta was approaching southwestern Louisiana, at the number of blue tarped homes. Yes. And here was a second hurricane coming. But what do you think the difference would be, if those homes, come back with fortified, roofs, before the next hurricane comes, because it's only a matter of time? Is that a process now? Is that something that's, going to be adopted there like it was in Alabama?
We always hope it will be. We have a few fortified homes in Louisiana, but Alabama is the leader in terms of the resilient construction to IBHS's standards. And I mean, Sally showed Alabama why it was worth that investment. It was Hurricanes Ivan and Katrina, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, that made Alabama take notice and make a change. And they knew another one was going to come. It was just a matter of time. And it may have taken 15 years for that storm to come. But I think those homeowners who were able to sleep in their beds, and another guy who was so excited because he didn't have any damage to clean up in his own house, he was out helping neighbors who didn't have fortified roofs and who needed that help. And he was the energy that the community needed to help kickstart their recovery. And if we can have more of those stories, I think that's a big goal for us in the future.
That's outstanding. How much, I think I heard a number quoted that 95% of the structures in Lake Charles had damage. I don't know how much of that would have been roof damage, but what do you think that number would have gone to, given this was a very powerful hurricane, if those had been, all fortified roofs, say, for example? Would it have been a 30% reduction, a 60% reduction with that level of hurricane?
I think that's hard to quantify, but when you look at damage from these storms, it all starts with the roof. You lose the roof and then you're going to lose the walls around it. Even if you just lose the roof covering, for the most part, there's nothing underneath that roof covering to keep the rain out. So then you just start getting water pouring in the ceiling, and you may not have lost the structure of the roof, but if you've got water pouring in your ceiling, then you've got wet couches, you've got wet carpets, you've got wet photo albums, wet clothes. Everything in your house has been damaged just because water came in. So we talk about simple things like sealing the roof deck. I mean, we're talking about putting tape, flashing tape over the seams in your roof deck. And that can help so much in keeping that water out, even if you do lose those shingles in winds. You're talking Cat 1, Cat 2, even Cat 3 level winds. And it can make a huge difference.
So where can our ambassadors in Louisiana and other places that have been, impacted by hurricanes this year, that may have roof replacements coming up, where can they go, Christina, to learn about that program and other programs that would help them be more resilient?
Yeah, you can learn more about IBHS at ibhs.org. That's where you'll find all of our research and our programs there. Fortifiedhome.org is where you can learn about the Fortified Home program. We've got a directory of roofers on there who we have trained and have passed an exam that we administer to make sure that they understand how to install these roofs, because the fortified system, it's not just a roofing standard. It also is part of it is verification process. The average homeowner doesn't know what to look at in a roof when they're picking a roofing contractor, or know how to verify the work they've asked for is being done. So we do that to ensure that you're getting that extra protection that you've asked for. And so we have a directory on fortifiedhome.org that goes through that, and it tells you the roofers who have been trained by us and can help you get that stronger roof on your home.
Christina, we're going to come back to you for a pick of the week in a moment. So fair warning, I think you probably already knew that, but I'll start down in the lower left-hand corner of my Hollywood squares. Well, no, I'll start at the bottom middle because I don't know how long she can talk. Aubrey, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick is a photograph from Blackwater Falls State Park from a local photographer, because it is just on fire. So the fall color is fantastic. If you haven't ever come to West Virginia for the fall foliage, definitely put it on your list and then give me an email and I'll plan out a trip for you.
So that's your new job, Aubrey, the travel agent for the Leaf Peepers.
Little side hustle.
Well, thank you for that, Aubrey. That's great. I think I'm going to be up in that neck of the woods end of the month. So maybe
let me know.
So get the leaves to hold on there for
Skyline Drive should still be pretty good.
Longer. That'll be awesome. Troy Kimmel, how about you? What you got for us?
Well, I've got one now that I've thought about it because
I thought you called for the foghorn earlier. You're lucky since Span didn't sound it.
I wanted to mention this because, Bill, we talked about this before, and with air traffic being down as it has been, to be able to get some of the ACARS profiles or some of the especially Southwest Airlines and I think FedEx offer The WXSTER.com website has that, and I forwarded the link along Bill to post, where you can pull up some of this ACARS data and see it. It's kind of a little bit of a clunky site. You've got to pick out the hour and the day and the hour, and then select the profile. Those can be a little bit weird because it uses airport IDs, and for some reason for Austin, it uses BSM, which that hadn't been used since 1995 at Bergstrom Air Force Base. So that would be AUS, actually goes in as BSM, but it's a good site. It does give you some ACAR profile data, and with increasing commercial air traffic as we're seeing, especially in Southwest and some of these other airlines, it at least gives you some good data, and so I recommend it.
Outstanding. Nate, I'll circle back around to you now.
Well, two things. Number one, the leaves here in North Carolina starting to hit peak at above 4,000 feet. So Grandfather Mountain, Clingman's Dome, those areas are hitting peak color, but still for most of the Blue Ridge Parkway, it is on fire right now. It looks beautiful. And so if you're looking for some leaf peeping, maybe trek through Western North Carolina on your way to West Virginia, and you'll be able to check out some good leaves here. My pick of the week actually has nothing to do with weather, but I thought it was the greatest thing on the internet today, and I thought you'd appreciate it. Paul Milgram is a economics professor at Stanford University. Was one of two people who won the Nobel Prize for economics, and his field of study is game theory, especially as it pertains to auctions. So if you've ever bid on anything on eBay, for example, his research is the kind of thing that's going to help you out. Well, the Nobel Prize is a European thing. They announce these things. Well, they're trying to call this guy in the middle of the night, don't have his number, don't have his information. So they call the other guy who won, who happens to be neighbor, goes over to this guy's house, rings the doorbell, and tells him he won the Nobel Prize, and it was all captured on his doorbell camera. You got to check this out. It's a minute and 20 seconds of zen. Like, you just won the Nobel Prize in economics, and we're telling you through your doorbell.
I saw after you picked that it made the nightly news tonight, Nate. That was really outstanding. So Nate's pick would make the nightly news, of course. So thank you for that, Nate. Bruce Jones, you always have an outstanding pick for us. You usually have to get it out of the safe because it's usually valuable. So what's it going to be now?
Well, this week I've been working with the earthquake folks in California. They have these great little tools out there. This not only has some pries and some kind of crowbar type things on it, but you can use that to turn off your gas at the gas main. And then this bottom part you stick in the ground and you twist that to turn off the water main, out at the curb. And this is called On Duty. And I think they're about $18 or something, but it's a handy little thing. It's kind of made like a hatchet or something, but it's made out of aluminum. But, the ability to turn off your natural gas and to turn off your water, that can save a lot of extra damage on your home. So does
it have a bottle opener?
Yeah, it should. Yeah.
I could open a bottle with that.
Troy, I think we're gonna have to name Bruce Mr. Multi-Tool because
Bruce always comes. Now I've got to go and find that now somewhere. Bruce, this is all your fault.
On Amazon.
I'll have it within 3 days here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce. That's just outstanding. Dylan, I hope I've given you plenty of fair warning. Surely you got an outstanding pick of the week for us.
I don't know that I was prepared for anything. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Maybe I'll talk about the leagues that.
Yeah, you didn't know you were going to lose 2 hours of your entire life.
You and all of us, Dylan. You and all of us. None of us know we got ourselves into.
No, I'm probably running out of time to get good leaf action here. Maybe I'll comment on that again here in central Pennsylvania. So pretty soon I'm going to be out there with a rake raking them up. So. Mm-hmm. Maybe go buy a rake. Or I don't know if that's as useful as the tool Bruce just showed. That seems a lot cooler than maybe a
pleased with that.
Is what I'm gonna buy this year instead of a rake. But
well, I'm gonna use the Colorado State Machine Learning Prediction webpage that was featured in Aaron Hill's outstanding talk at NWA. I thought that was super, and in honor of you, I will share that pick of the week with you too, to go along with your travel tips for Central Pennsylvania. We really enjoyed having you on the show tonight.
Yeah,
it was tremendously enlightening and a great talk for us. Thank you for sticking with us the whole 2 hours. We really appreciate that, Dylan.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a great time being on. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, welcome back anytime. Scott Elmore, I know you got a pick of the week.
See, I'm like Dylan. I didn't know I was going to be held to the fire on the pick of the week.
Well, see, that's the bad part about it. Since we don't have to do tests anymore, I don't get to warn people that they've got to come up with picks of the week.
I really don't have anything. I'm in Montgomery tonight, so the leaves are what they are. I don't really look at the leaves in Montgomery.
They're turning brown and falling off the trees.
Exactly. I do want to say this. I appreciate y'all having me on, and Nate, I really appreciate the debate or talk, because I've had very few circumstances or situations where I've been able to discuss a lot of these things with meteorologists. And Nate, I really appreciate those thoughts and those points that you put out to me. I appreciate that.
Anytime. And we're not here to rag on anybody. Like I said, I think innovation is a good thing. We ought to be pushing the boundaries, and we can't always wait for the federal government to do it for us. Yeah. And I think if we can, coming on the program and asking some questions and whatnot, get you to even better place than you are, then all for it.
Hey, Scott, what is somewhere people can go and look up your business? I assume it's got an internet website.
Yeah, certainly. You can just go to www.theguardiancanary.com. Obviously, we're on all social media platforms, the Guardian Canary on Facebook, Twitter, it's Guardian Canary, and Instagram, the Guardian Canary as well.
Outstanding, Scott. Thank you for joining us tonight. You did a great job representing your company and your group, and we appreciate you being here. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Bill.
Outstanding. Christina, I've stalled as long as I can. I know you got a great pick of the week standing by, though.
I do. I shared it with you earlier, Bill. There's an AL.com piece about the impact of the fortified roofs down in Alabama, specifically in Baldwin County after Hurricane Sally, including a comment from one of the homeowners. And I think it's a reminder that we can do something to stop these horrible images that we keep seeing, especially after seeing the devastation of Hurricane Delta this week. A little bit of hope out there as well that we can do something about it.
Oh, outstanding. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to get to see you over the Zoom after we talked back in June or whenever it was. It's, time has just lost all reference for me.
Especially this year it has, but yeah. It was a pleasure being on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you all.
But anytime you got anything to talk about, just yell at us. We'd love to have you back and let you share anything you got with us from what's going on in your world up there on the border of South and North Carolina.
And thank you. I appreciate it.
A quick show note for this Thursday night. We have a special show because James is on vacation next week. So show 770 will be moved up to this Thursday night. Mike Farrar will join us. That's going to be a fun show. We'll be talking about all things modeling, and his friend Betsy Kling will join us as the guest panelist. So all bets are off as to what may happen with that show. I asked Betsy what time she turned into a pumpkin. She said, Nate, 10:59 p.m. Eastern time. So,
just now.
Yeah. So. Yep. So we'll have to be done by this time. And so as that is the witching hour for Troy too, I'll go ahead and say those magic words. WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast. It's all about weather. And like I always say, we normally do it on nights, but every say that it seems like we're doing it on a different night. We'll be here Thursday night this week for replay Monday night, but for the live watchers, we'll be here Thursday. Jen will be back. Then she's a little under the weather tonight and trying to get her recovered, but should have a great show Thursday night. I hope you'll join us. And until we do that, then, as I always tell you, have a great week. Keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. 2 hours. Thanks, everybody. You keep that multi-tool handy. Dylan, thank you, Scott.
Let me know, Christina, if you want to come have some real barbecue. Let me know.
Oh, wow. Christina, don't let him do that to you. No.
No, it's good. No, the South Carolina stuff is fine. It's I'm of the opinion that if you're having barbecue for lunch, you're doing all right no matter what type it is, whether it's Eastern North Carolina, Western, Lexington.
What about Texas?
Texas, well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's hard to come by up this way. I'm just, just what it is. So.
I got a couple of Dreamland ribs in the refrigerator up there.
There we go.
I think
there you go. I'm down with that.
A couple of those up.
I'll be over there in 2 hours.
Good night, everybody.
Come on. Bye.
See you guys.
See y'all later.
Good night.
All right, everybody, that is a wrap. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, a Thursday night special. We'll see you all Thursday night at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. Y'all have